So before we close out, there's some political things going on right now, and one of them being the Church of England is, looking at maybe changing God's pronouns to be non-binary.
See, you guys are going to have to inform me on this because
I was going to say, I was not aware of this.
Welcome to the team.
Yeah.
So it's exactly what I just said.
We can play the clip right now.
Yeah, play the clip. And we're back. So
You're just giving me more work, man.
yeah.
Sorry, maybe we didn't play the clip.
Yeah. If we did, awesome. If not, Angel did not get paid any more or less.
We'll double it.
Yeah, we'll double it. More bagels. More bagels.
You can always pay me.
So anyway, what's going on? One of the things going on is the Church of England has discussed changing God's pronoun from him to they. What is your opinions, and how do you think we have gotten here?
So funny enough, actually, on a recent video I released a couple of days ago, a couple of videos ago or whatever, I had one of my friends come on, and we were just watching TikToks, and he was reacting to them as like a former pastor and theologian stuff. And one of the things that came up during one of these TikToks was, is God a man? And they weren't referring to Jesus, by what I understand. They were referring to the concept of God being referred to as he. And they jumped into the no category. Now, I think they were universalist Unitarians, so, in a whole different camp. But when we were during that discussion, when we were talking about it, we were kind of playing that out. And I made the comment, I'm like, well, I think the big thing behind this is the reason why people can more easily justify it outside of a human context where we talk about gender. The reason why it's easier to justify is because people agree from a theological standpoint that God is genderless. Like the Spirit of God has no gender. And that's why people can go down that category of well, logically speaking, God has no gender, so therefore he's genderless. And actually, when I proposed that, I did get someone in the comment who was like, "That's a completely modern concept. The church is screwed and stuff." And I wasn't even proposing that I agreed with that sort of reasoning that we should go from there to using gender neutral terms. I was just saying that I think that's where this really breaks down, is because that's where this argument will start. Well, logically, God's not a gender.
I agree with that. I think people say God is spirit, right? And so because God is spirit, technically they can ascribe to him whatever pronouns they see fit. This problem kind of happens, I think, because we've eroded the idea of an objective truth, and we've eroded the idea of the influence of Christianity in England or in America or whatever. And so the general public, people who are not Christians, use the word God in a different way that Christians use it, but because of the culture that was created in those places, they called him he. Now that Christianity is eroding in those societies, including America, they don't see the need to do that anymore. So now things like the Church of England, which I don't know where they stand as far as their doctrine goes, but because they're influenced by the culture so much, it's easy for them to just play into this progressive language and just be like, well, if God is genderless, technically, then we should say they, because it would be more appeasing.
Well, and I would say if God is genderless, let's respect God's desired pronouns.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
He's revealed himself. Now, to be honest, they is pretty Trinitarian. So, I mean...
Wait, are you a polytheist?
No. But the reality would come is, what do you believe about the authorship of Scripture? Because I think this is getting into a question of inspired words or not. Yeah. And that is a deeper conversation than preference. And that's why, for some of you watching, you might be, why is this a big deal? If God is spirit, isn't that fine? I'd say, if we didn't have the written, revealed word of God, that conversation might be okay. But we have written, revealed word.
Well, I think this also impacts theology, because you look at it.
100%.
You look at how in the epistles, where I think it's Paul mostly in the epistles, where he talks about church structure, he talks about gender roles, he talks about these different topics, and he talks about this idea wives submit to your husbands as Christ as a church submits to Christ and all these different things. I think I said that wrong.
We know what you're saying.
Yeah.
We got it.
Ephesians 5, we got you.
But there's this idea of rules within the human community. There's this idea of rules, and partially what makes sense of that is that God is referred to as He, that gives us a reference to the role that we play as humans on a sexual front. And this affects our theology of sexuality. It affects our theology of church rules, gender rules, the role of church to Christ. And so I think there is a theological importance to God being referred to as He.
Not to mention that Jesus actually came down in the form of a man. Right?
Yeah.
I do want to
so it
call
helps to
something
back
out.
it up.
Not that you said something wrong. You didn't say anything wrong.
I
but
can.
a point of clarification. She said that we need to respect God's preferred pronouns. I want to be easy there. What would you say to somebody in the comments section, because I know we're going to get this if we get enough views on here, that says, wait a minute, you want to respect God's preferred pronouns, but you don't want to respect mine?
You're not God.
Satire.
I mean, this is
Yeah,
where
no,
I think
it's
words
a
matter.
satire,
I would have
but
never
it's a fair
structured the
pushback.
sentence that way.
Sure.
For that very reason, but since you did, we got to ask.
And so it comes back to it's the double standard, because I'm not the one coming here and saying I'm changing God's pronouns. But if the people who want to change God's pronouns are also the same people that are demanding we respect their pronouns. So from their perspective, they've already played the pronoun game. And so they've already demanded of the world to respect, but they're not going to respect God's. So I was more trying to point out their hypocrisy than our willingness. Does that make sense? Yes. So they're demanding that the world recognize how they've identified, while we're sitting here and going, but you're unwilling to recognize how God has identified.
I like that.
So that's more what I meant by
Another
a good
thing.
turn
Oh,
of
go
the
ahead.
table.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if we're going to go ahead and give ourselves the authority to change he into they in the Bible, what can't you change after that? Where's
The eroding of
when
of
something else
objective
happens
right.
in the culture and it's controversial that the Bible says something else? Are we just going to change that too and then just continue to butcher the Bible until it's
And
not
usually-
even the original, it doesn't match the original text?
And a lot of people will say, well, the Bible's already been corrupted. And that puts us into a far different conversation to actually talk about manuscript evidence, which I know you're going to laugh. We're not going to go there. But I think that
I
that's
laugh because
unfortunate.
that's the biggest thing I get with the Muslim community. I absolutely tries to shred the biblical history, which I just anyway.
We'll do another
Did you ask
panel
him
on
if the moon was split in two? If that's historically accurate?
Wait, what?
Because that's what the Quran says, that Muhammad split the moon in half. He made two moons.
I don't remember. I don't know about that.
We'll do another panel on apologetics.
I would love to be on that panel. That would be a fun panel.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you ask the question, how do you think we got here? And I think it goes to kind of what Ryan is saying. It's like the culture is now influencing the church instead of the church influencing the culture. And you see it mostly in these progressively secular societies. America is becoming more progressively secular. England has been secular for a very long time. But if you look, what's interesting is people think that because in America and in England that the church is quote unquote dying, right? They think that Christianity's done, but that's not the case. Because if you look, everywhere else, it's growing faster than ever before.
Oh, yeah.
In places where it's the most oppressed, right? Now, what I want to pose is, do you think that these societies in which it is growing fast will ever get to the point where they're dealing with the nonsense that we're dealing with here in the church, with like now literally having to defend God's pronouns?
I think yes and no. Like every culture, I think there's going to be more of a homogenization of culture to a certain extent with the internet, with inter-travel, and with stuff like that. Unless governments actually make a concerted effort to isolate themselves or make a concerted effort to make themselves unique, I think there will be this general kind of homogenization to a certain extent. And I also think that a part of it is, I think the part of the secular side of things comes from two things. One, the Enlightenment. It comes from this idea that, well, we got to question everything, which then led to postmodernism, which then led to, well, we got to question truth, which then led to this complete,
Wokeism.
yeah, which led to this complete nonsense that we have nowadays. And so I think if communities have, I think if these other countries, as they develop further, get more technology, get more of these scientific things, if they ever hit a period where they have like this enlightenment moment where they're like, oh, we need to question everything.
Right.
And then I think it'll lead to that. But if they avoid that enlightenment period and they kind of keep sticking with a more traditional route, but still growing in development, I think it is possible to escape that thinking.
Yeah, I think the Church of England is unique because its historicity is one that's tied to the government and therefore tied to the culture and tied to all these things. So in places where they have never had a state church, it's going to be a little bit different than someplace like England or even here, where the kind of the point of America from the foundation was that you could practice whatever branch of Christianity you wanted to. You didn't have to be Anglican, you didn't have to be whatever. And so that, I think, is a little bit of a different comparison. But I do think to some extent we're facing the same problems as England. With just the woke side of the progressive Christianity and how it's pretty much dominated all the mainline denominations to an extent. But I think what's happening in response is that independent churches are that are rising up, that are kind of inflating those numbers. And whether we're on the same page as them doctrinally or not, they are inflating the numbers of evangelicalism and therefore Christianity as a whole in America. So you have places like I've heard of 3 charismatic churches pop up in New York that are huge within like the last 6 months. And I think those things aren't going into the statistics. And so people are looking at the mainline denominations and saying they're shrinking, when in reality people are leaving there and going to something a little bit more charismatic.
And the hope is in that it's still centered on Scripture, right?
100%.
And that's any church that begins or starts, that would be the hope and prayer to find that.
And two things I think to note. One, the numbers of any religion doesn't determine its truth. The numbers of any belief system doesn't determine how true it is. And secondly, I am actually more encouraged by the fact that when I hear people talk about how the church I'm not encouraged in the sense I'm happy the church is shrinking. Don't misquote me on this. But what I'm saying is I'm more glad when people say I don't identify with the church and completely disassociate from the church than trying to say, well, I'm Christian but not actually believe or live out any of the principles. Mm-hmm. I'd much rather see a world that becomes more secular and completely just denies Christianity altogether, and the true church actually remain to the core doctrines, than have this giant, we have 3 billion people in the church, but 99% of them don't agree with all the core principles of the gospel. I'd much rather just have this
I'm on the same page as you.
The true.
Yeah. Less Christians, but more potent churches.
The one true church. The one true church. So just to guide this, I'm sorry, we're going to be wrapping up soon, but just to guide this into the society that we're living in now, where we just had the Grammys that happened as a big thing with I thought his name was Stan Smith, the Adidas, where he did a whole, the song was titled Unholy. So he did an unholy performance, which I thought it was hilarious that people got so upset. It's well, what do you expect? It's the Grammys.
The song beckons for the whole thing.
Yeah. It's called Unholy. And we didn't grow up.
The Jay-Z song got me more mad.
I didn't even watch it.
Than the Sam Smith.
What JC?
Yeah.
Sam Smith, right?
I didn't even watch it. See, you don't even got the right name.
I don't even care about
Sam Smith. Sam Smith.
Sam Smith? No, the Jay-Z performance got me more mad when they sat around the table like the Last Supper.
Yeah.
And they had this song called
God Did.
God what?
God
Did. And he has a 4 or 5 minute verse all about how God did, but it's all about how Hove did it. So he's literally rapping about himself. The whole song.
Corny.
I don't really watch these things, so I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm hearing from you guys.
You sit around the Last Supper. You have a song called God Did, and then you rap about yourself for 5 minutes. It's
Again, I think it keeps coming back to this idea of the ideas and the motifs and the teachings of Christianity will always be skewed and will always be taken and will always be used. And it's meant to bring, and we've seen this from every artist. How many artists have pretended to be Jesus or stepped into some weird Lil Nas X moment? Or, we could go off on all these things. What it all comes back to is, as a parent and one who works with students, each of those is teachable moments. So I'm actually thankful that the world is going to be the world that explicitly, because then it gets to say, I can put that in front of people and go, what is wrong with this? Like, let's actually have a conversation. And if you don't see something wrong with it, oh boy, we have more of a conversation.
The whole Satan thing doesn't really bother me because that's who they're worshiping anyway. The things that bother me is when they take Bible stories and they reenact them and spit in God's face.
Yeah.
That's what gets me annoyed, because then you're making fun of Christianity instead of just, worshiping Satan like you've always done.
Well, I think a lot of them don't even see it as making fun of Christianity. They just don't understand what Christianity actually believes. Like, a lot of people
So don't depict it at all then.
they don't know what's offensive or inoffensive, so they probably don't even think about it. Like, you can't.
Can you
can't avoid
imagine a
doing
Grammys
something-
performance though, where they reenact a scene of the Quran, or they dress up like Hasidic Jews?
I don't find that to be a very compelling argument, only because everyone knows that 90% of America is secular or Christian. And so it's not culturally relevant to do either of those things. If it was culturally relevant, maybe.
I mean, Muslim religion is huge.
Not in America.
Yeah, but America's not founded on Muslim values.
Yeah,
and,
it's also
and I
touchy.
think like Christianity has become such an integral part of the country that people pull from it as any kind of reference, artistic reference, storytelling reference. It's just embedded in it, and so it becomes the easy thing to make fun of, the easy thing to critique, etc.
Oh no, once
Does
your
that mean
church
the
is
party's
gone.
over?
Touch the Grammys and instantly,
That's
boom,
it.
it's gone.
That's God saying this conversation's
Yeah,
over,
it's
now.
It's over. Bring Stan Smith.
Yeah.
up here. No.
That guy Stan is the worst.
So, just to come in for a close on this subject, I think it's interesting when we see a whole entire world that's just rebelling against Christianity, right? Like, they cannot stand Christianity. If you want to be this, you want to be that, that's totally cool. Let's make fun of Jesus. Let's spit in the face of Christians. To me, that is validation that Christianity is true. Because
100%. We're the only ones that are attacked that hard.
yeah. And not to say that, in certain parts of the world,
I was going to say, people would argue that their religion is also persecuted depending where they're at, depending what country and what place you look at.
It's definitely, I think Christians got it on the
But
persecution level,
Christians are getting attacked even in other countries, man.
No, but what I'm saying is that-
correct me if I'm wrong, but if Christians, I think Christianity is the only religion that when persecuted grows. I don't know of any other religion that when
I mean,
persecuted.
there's
I
definitely
wouldn't know the
persecution in
statistics
other
on that.
religions.
Yeah.
But it's not in the size of
Yeah, well, I was
Christianity
just,
by far.
I wanted to preface that because I'd see the comments like, what do you mean other religions aren't being persecuted? It's like, yes, we know in pockets around the world,
course.
there are different religions being persecuted. But overall, the absolute rebellion against Christianity, like people hate it so much, like with a passion. To me, that is clarity that I'm probably doing the right thing by being a part of this. So what's your guys' perspective on, this, why is Christianity hated so much and displayed so much in culture?
Church hurt. Church hurt. I can't. Church hurt.
Oh, yeah.
It's so many people are just church hurt. I mean, you ask these people, why do you hate Christianity? Oh, because all you guys do is just ask for money and take money from people and manipulate people. A lot of them are struggling with this idea of we also, because we're called Christians, we can't be sinners. You guys are Christians. You guys think you're perfect, but yet you guys are doing it. No, we go to church because we are sinners. We're trying to be perfect. We're trying to do good, right? But at the end of the day, we can't just, you can't sit there and say, oh, well, these guys are sitting here and calling themselves the one true church, so that means they must be perfect. No, at the end of the day, we're just human, and we might make a mistake. Who goes to a gym and expects to see somebody completely perfect, never breaks their diet, never does anything, right? You go to a gym, oh no, I'm not gonna go to that gym because there's a fat person there, and clearly he's not really working out. No. That at the end of the day, you have to understand that we're just humans. But yes, church hurt is the reason why so many people hate Christians. Because there are those Christians that like to make themselves like, oh yeah, I'm Christian. Nobody can touch me. And that unfortunately puts a bad stain on us. But we're here trying to correct that. I believe that we are.
I think that could be part of it. But I think that another big issue is people don't like to be told what to do. and
Yeah,
they want to
that is-
live.
yeah.
They want to live their own life, and whenever you tell them, well, the Bible says that homosexuality is wrong, or the Bible says that committing adultery is wrong, or stealing is wrong, or any sin. I don't want to single out one specific sin. People get offended because they want to continue living in that sin. And we're telling them that God doesn't like that. And I think that's one of the reasons why Christianity is so hated, because it kind of tells people, you know, this is God's moral standing and you need to live this way. And they don't like that.
It's a multifaceted question because obviously every single person has multiple reasons for why they like or dislike or hate something or whatever. It's like it's always multifaceted in that regard. I agree. I think if you look at from like a Christian understanding of human nature, we shouldn't be shocked that people hate Christianity because, as you said, like everyone's a sinner, and people don't like being told that they shouldn't be sinning anymore and that they're doing things wrong. Like even like that's just the natural inclination is that I don't want to be wrong. I can't have the fact that I'm wrong. I'm sinning and stuff like that. That in itself is offensive to people. And I mean, the scriptures even say this will be offensive and it'll divide people and all that stuff. So like by that standard alone, it's going to be offensive. I think it's also part of the reason why it's hated is, so I'm speaking from someone who speaks to other religions and people, and my audience is so out there in the world. There's also the history of Christianity that people tend to have a problem with.
Right.
They associate it with colonialism, or they associate it with slavery. They associate it with these different things because of the history, not just church in like the present, but the history of the church itself being seen as an invading force, and which wasn't always good. And so like that's part of it too. Like some people from from other countries, especially like African countries and stuff, associate it with colonialism. They associate it with that, and they're like, it leaves a disgusting taste in their mouth because of that reason.
Right.
too.
They look at the history and say, "Oh no, this is what we associate Christians with, so I want nothing to do with it."
Yeah, it's a typical, this is the white man's religion, all that kind of, subjective stuff that people hear. I think that there's a degree of it as well that's just the lack of understanding of what the actual gospel is. I think we used to teach the Bible in schools. That no longer happens. I went to Catholic school, thank God. I at least got some glimpse of scripture growing up. But I think just the fundamental misunderstanding of the point, not even like doctrinally appropriate Christian, like just the point of Jesus just goes over people's heads most of the time. And culture doesn't help, art, like what happens with Jay-Z and Sam Smith, that doesn't help. Like people are further and further from even understanding not only whether or not they need a savior, but whether or not they're even sinners. Mm-hmm. Like you have to convince people that they're sinners today. And that to me is fascinating. Like I know, like me knowing myself, I know how bad I am. I know I'm not perfect. To think that there's people that just don't want to even admit that they can or have done wrong, that I think is a problem in itself that's caused by postmodernism, that's caused by this lack of objective morality that says any truth can be anybody's truth. Whatever's good is whatever I say is good. So I think a lot of that, adds to the fire.
It's also important to remember that people are relational people. So when you tell them that that they believe something that's wrong, that's leading them to hell, you're not only saying that about them, you're saying that about their friends and family and their whole. Yeah. So like when I'm on my channel and do normally on my live streams is when I get more into the differences between Christianity and Islam stuff, things like that. But like when I'm on my channel, a lot of it goes back. I remind myself the big reason why there's this repulsion against Christianity is not only because am I telling them that they're wrong. Their family, their community, maybe even most of their country is fallen.
Well, while I agree with all of you, I think it's far simpler than everything you've said. It was predestined because Jesus said so.
I knew it.
Jesus promised us. Jesus promised us that the world was going to hate us. And so I don't think there should be a surprise. I think there are times when we need to make sure that we are not hated because of how we've treated the world versus, if we're hated for the doctrine of what Scripture teaches, we can't fight that. But if people legitimately think we hate them because of how we treat them in real relationship, not in hypothetical, this is what the church has done, but in real, I look you across the table and you think I hate you based on the way I'm treating you, I think that's more of something that we each individual Christian can deal with.
And
versus
this is difficult in our postmodern age because it's really hard, and going to the whole thing about postmodernism, it's really hard in America, or really hard in this postmodern age, to distinguish the difference when people talk about their church hurt. Because I've talked to someone before who he grew up within the church or whatever, and he's like, well, I have gay feelings and things, and they just hate gays, they just hate gays, and he left the church because of that. And based on how he was talking, it's like it's so legalistic and all that stuff. And you talk to some people, the problem that sometimes I have within this postmodern age, and maybe some people can speak into this, is how to discern when talking to someone. Is it actually that they were actually treated wrong? Or did they actually just disagree with doctrine, and because of their postmodern lens, they interpret it as an attack on themselves?
Well, so this is Carl Trueman's work, Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self, also Strange New World, the less scholarly work, where it says, how did we get here to this train of thought where everything about identity is so wrapped up in expressive individualism, meaning this idea of how I express my desires is my identity. So if you suppress my desires in any way, you're not just saying my desires are bad, you're saying to the core that my identity, whether it be some of the things we talked about or anything, if you stop my desires and wants, I'm going to be repulsed and push you away. And the highest good is to act upon my internal desires. The highest evil is to suppress those. So all of a sudden the church becomes the place of the highest evil to the world, because we're saying, no, deny yourself, take up your cross. Well, we're not saying that. Jesus is saying, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me.
And if I had to pinpoint or guess at a time when that became a mainstream idea, it would have to be the free love movement in the 60s and 70s, like
absolutely.
Woodstock era. I think brought that idea of like radical acceptance to the forefront, and then those kids went on to become college professors and people in the government and all these things, and now that's what's influencing the culture, and they're essentially the gatekeepers of any kind of position of power in our culture.
I mean, it was even happening before the 60s. You have Friedrich Nietzsche in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and then you have Freud and these different thinkers.
Freud, Wilde,
It started in
Rousseau.
the academic field and then
Right.
trickled down into culture. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm mainstream, right? Because of course, there's going to be history with those ideas that they have to, bubble up somehow.
Word. That's all I have to say. See you guys on the next. No. All right, guys. So we've covered so many topics in this short time that we've been together. I just want to first say thank you so much for being here. I feel like even though we've covered all this stuff, covered all these topics, it's flown by. And we've been here for a long time, so long that we have the Calvinists predestined to text during my closing arguments.
My wife asked. Hey, I left my wife and kids 3 hours away.
But so I just want to say thank you guys. And if you have any closing things to say before we tune out.
Like, share, and subscribe. Just honored to have you guys here. It's been awesome to talk with you and really just get to know you guys on an actual personal situation, not just through text message, thread, or whatever. But I'm happy that we got to do this. Hopefully, we'll get to do more. And thank you guys all for coming out to Jersey.
Well, and now because we've met face to face, I feel like I can go even harder in the group chat. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Just kidding.
No, I agree
with
great.
that.
It was great meeting all of you guys and sharing the thoughts and the ideas that we have. I mean, you guys definitely gave me things to question and to look into. I've never really looked into election and predestination. It's never come up, right? But it's nice because it's things like this that allow people to question certain areas of our faith, and we grow as Christians by doing so. So it's great to sit down with you guys.
So 2 more panel ideas. We got apologetics up, and we can do one about culture, politics. There we go.
Yeah, that's a good
So
one.
if you want to see those, subscribe to the Why Jesus Network.
Yes.
Yes.
And I gotta say, hanging out with you guys is a breath of fresh air because, we're showing the world what the one true church looks like, and we could have many different views on these secondary doctrines, and yet hang out and have a fruitful conversation about it. So it's really cool.
And eat some bagels.
Yeah, New York bagels.
And I think, people should feel comfortable having these types of conversations within their church. And I hope if church leaders are watching, they should foster an environment where people are allowed to question the Calvinist approach of their church, or they're allowed to question the charismatic approach of their church, because us coming together and discussing the scriptures is really how we're growing spiritually and maturing.
Yeah.
Amen.
And
So-
friends don't let friends deconstruct.
Wow, that should be a T-shirt. All right, guys, thank you.
In his merch.
Yeah. I'm making a list, checking it twice. Right. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Follow all of these guys on social media and YouTube. All of their links will be in the description. Definitely check out their stuff. They have some amazing content. You will also see them here on the Why Jesus Network. We're hoping to do more panels like this with other Christian content creators. And so like, share, subscribe. Make sure you are tuned in so you don't miss the next one. God bless. See you guys on the next one.
The One True Church.